Okay, I'm going to come and sit here.
Right.
So, Woking.
Yes.
So you're leaving China
Yes.
and you're coming back by boat with Angus.
Yes. By boat as far as Italy. And then we had to, I can't remember what the port was we had to get out of, and get in a train and then cross Europe and France, basically North Italy and France, back to London. And I think we must have gone to stay with either my sister or somebody, because we didn't actually at that moment have anywhere to live. And then a couple, very nice couple called the Wilfords, who Foreign Office couple, who'd been with us in Peking. He was being posted to New York, and his house was going to be empty, and they said, well, we could rent theirs, and it was in a place called Woking, which had very good train connections with London and things. So we said, well, that would be wonderful, thank you very much, which we did. We rented it, and it so happened that not very far away, just up the road, there was a cottage that was for sale. And there was an awfully nice man who was selling it, and we looked at it and thought it would be a jolly good start to our housing adventure in Britain. Now we were back from Peking. And it was going to be £11,000, which was going to be a bit much for us, and our mortgage wasn't really going to cover it. So he very kindly reduced it to 8, which I thought was terribly generous of him. And we immediately said that would be lovely. And this was a lovely cottage called Mile Path Cottage. And it was situated, it was a Victorian cottage, but it was in the old sort of cottage style. So that suited the sort of thing that I wanted, because I like old cottages. But it was sufficiently modern for Dad to be happy about it. And it was at the beginning of a rather select area in Woking, which was called Mile Path. And the sort of rather posh people lived there. We weren't part of that, but their houses were posh, going down to a rather selective golf course. Anyway, Mile Path Cottage was our first home with all the children, and it was brilliant because it had enough bedrooms for everybody. It wasn't very big and a pretty small garden, but the only thing was that we really couldn't find any sort of good chums in the area. John and Jamie, I think, had just started at Friars. John went to the local nursery school. Angus was small, and Alexander had not yet been born. So anyway, we were very happy there. Alan was posted to London. He had 2 jobs. One of them was working on a royal commission that actually had my dad in it as well. I think it was part of the government organisation for recruiting people to the Foreign Office, and Alan was the member of the Foreign Office that had to vet them in one sense, and my dad was there. I'm not quite sure why. I mean, I'm not sure, but anyway, he was on the committee as well. So that was rather a nice connection.
And so did you have fun there in Woking? Did you feel you fit there?
No, not at all. Unfortunately, when the nice people who'd rented their house, the Wilfords, came back, that was nice. We were looking for somewhere to buy. Have I said this already?
Yes, and so we bought Mile Path Cottage.
That's right, yes.
But in terms of the community,
no, they weren't our sort at all, I'm afraid. Not at all. And meanwhile, we were endlessly going down to Kent, where the Barretts had provided, when we hadn't got a home, a fantastic home from home, and all the children at one stage or another would be there for their holidays. I think Sheila, on one holidays, had 8 children, 4 of mine and 4 of her own. She was the most remarkable woman. So Kent was where we were all looking. It was where my parents had bought a house, but now sold.
That's where Robin and Helen were.
Robin and Helen, until they moved back to Scotland. They moved from there.
But their children were at Friars School.
Yes, they were.
And that's
right.
where Jamie was, and that's where I was.
Yes, that's right.
So you were thinking about Kent, although you were in Woking.
Yes, that's true. I was longing to move to Kent because it was a much greener. I mean, Woking was so provincial, really. We had nice people as neighbours, and there was an awfully nice little shop at the top of the hill. But
What do you remember about the garden?
it was tiny, really. Although the boys were small, so that didn't matter. We had a pole at the bottom, which I think John had put up. Had you? I think you had. Anyway, it had posts in the side of it for sort of clambering up. And there was also a swing, I think, wasn't there?
I think it was a guy called Douglas who put that up.
Oh, that's right.
Who was Douglas? I can't remember.
Oh, Douglas. I had an awfully good friend who was terribly handy with things like that. He helped run second-hand furniture shop. I mean, it wasn't called second-hand, it was called The Venture, and it was rather a cut above second-hand furniture. It had, I don't know what you'd call it, sort of, well, anyway, a shop. But he was awfully nice and terribly helpful, and he helped put that up, that's right, and also the swing. And then along came Alexander?
Yeah.
Yes, the baby, because Angus was a small boy then. And we had, the house, the cottage was great. It had a playroom, it had a kitchen, it had a big sitting room, and then a very long, thin, attached to the sitting room, sort of separated off by glass doors, was the sort of dining area. And I acquired via Douglas, the second-hand furniture man, a very long, thin dining room table, which still exists in the family because John now has it in his kitchen.
It's my kitchen table now.
It's your kitchen table.
And it was stripped pine. You were
Yes.
stripping a lot of pine in those days.
That was the fashion. That's right. Yes, pine was in, but unpainted. Of course, several years later, everybody was painting their pine tables, but in my days, it was a stripping thing. And it's a lovely table. It's very well made, and it seated the whole family, and it fitted in to this very narrow room, which became our dining room, and we had church pews. Do you remember? Church pews to sit alongside it.
And also in the kitchen there was a sort of banquette which you could lift up and put
And there was stuff underneath, yes,
Yes.
that's covered in blue.
Yes.
And all the boys used to sit there, that's right. And Alan at one end and me at the other, or me facing them and doing the cooking and things. And that was when, yes, when all Alexander was born there, was when we were in Woking.
And there was some amateur dramatics. You were part of a local Kent. I remember having to act as a little prince at the end of some show.
Was it the
In
school?
Woking. No, it was a Woking collective of Amdram.
I don't remember that.
No,
I don't remember that at all. I'm glad you do.
It's in
Goodness.
the logbook, I think.
And you were a little prince.
I had to just tell. It wasn't a speaking well, of course. Naturally, you could see why.
Well, I mean, he was the
it wasn't
the
much
star.
of a stretch.
Undoubtedly, darling, you were the star.
I just had to turn up at the end and stand looking mournful as the lost boy coming home or something like that.
Yes, right.
But so you don't have very fond memories then of Woking? Or
Well, Woking wasn't really my scene. I mean, we so enjoyed the Barretts, and all the boys enjoyed being with the Barretts, and Kent is a lovely county. And so we were always being drawn out of suburbia and into Kent. So it was inevitable, really, in the end, that we would actually move to Kent. But meanwhile, Woking is probably one of the best connected to London. It was a very short, very fast journey, and Dad could actually get out at Waterloo East and just walk across the Thames to the Foreign Office. So it was tremendously convenient. And so for his home posting there, it was absolutely brilliant.
and then we had to sell. Then we went to Greece and we had to sell Malpath Cottage. Or?
We did sell, but well, we needed to have another home, and we were looking in Kent, and Alan had been posted to Greece, and I was packing up Mile Path Cottage because I knew that we were wanting to sell it and move to Kent. And he was back from Greece, where he'd gone before I came out with the children on holiday, for the holidays. He came back and with John Barrett went to see a house that was actually up for sale. And he discovered that it had an Aga, it had a well outside for its own water, it had a large enough garden. It was an old cottage. He thought, this is just exactly what how Janet will want. I think we'll probably buy it. This was without my seeing it, but with John Barrett urging him on. And Alan, I remember, said, well, we ought to have a survey done. And John Barrett, a lawyer, I may say, said, oh, no, you don't need a survey. They'll find all sorts of reasons why not to buy it. So if you like it, then I suggest you buy it. So Anna said, yes, okay, well then we will, and you can be the lawyer and you can actually make the arrangements because I'm busy now because I'm on journeying to and fro and we've got to pack up and go to wherever it is. So when eventually it came to telling me, I hadn't seen this house, this was going to be my home. They had agreed between the two that they would buy it and John would be our lawyer for it, and I would organise the money, and luckily I didn't have to, sort of try and figure out how the hell we were going to pay for it. Whether I liked it or not, it was a done deal before I even saw it. Nobody ever believes me when I say that, that we bought this house and I hadn't even seen it. Anyway, when we went round with Sheila and John, I was absolutely appalled. I thought, how on earth are we going to make this into a home?
And what was wrong with it?
Well, almost everything really. Only half of it had been used. It had been a sort of overflow from Notley Hall, which was a bad boys' school run by
Bernardo's
the Bernardos, that's right. And it was not in good condition. The main sitting room, when we went round it, we were shown into the sitting room, I was shown into the sitting room, which was nice, nice enough room. It had a fire burning and it was very nice and warm, and it had a sort of a bit that was not livable in next door, but that could be a sort of outhouse or something. It had an Aga, it did have an Aga, and it had that room with the fireplace and two more rooms down below, so there would have been, certainly was going to be enough room and an attic. What I didn't realise was that in fact that the sitting room, which was so cosy when we actually went round with this fire burning in it, was actually freezing cold because it had been built on in Victorian times, but the walls were not the correct thickness or double thickness. They were just one brick thick. So the weather came in, the walls were damp, it was terribly cold, which is why they'd lit the fire to make it warm, obviously. And it was a disaster as a house, I thought. It was going to be absolutely awful. And then we were being posted, Alan was posted somewhere new. Greece, was it?
Greece.
I don't know. But I was going to have to stay behind and make it livable in. Anyway, the boys were at school, even the little ones. They were at different schools. I think Jamie and possibly John were at Marlborough. Angus went to the local family school, and I had Alex as a baby and a toddler with me. And what we did was to actually divide, it was called the Compasses, and I didn't like that name at all. And it was only called the Compasses for the sale, benefit of the sale, because of Compass Cottages, which was down the road. And luckily, the person who'd told us all about this cottage, which was for sale, Margaret Butcher, wife of a local builder who was going to help me make it livable, said, when I was a child, she said, we used to gather white violets from the ditch outside, and it used to be known as Applebys because John Appleby used to live in it. Who was John Appleby? He was Florence Nightingale's coachman when he was a young man, and in his old age he was coachman to the man who lived in Notley Hall next door, the big house next door. And he lived in this rather run-down cottage, which is known because he was called John Appleby as Applebys. And I much preferred Applebys as a name to Compasses, which I thought was, you know, irrelevant. And what's more, it has a very prolific apple tree in the front garden. So we took out the thing saying Compasses, threw that away, put up something called Applebys, and it's been Applebys ever since. And then I spent quite a lot of time with the butcher firm, trying to make it livable in, and originally we divided into half, so only half was let, while we went off to Greece. We had a wonderful time in Greece, and unfortunately after 8 months, our very nice ambassador, Alan was the commercial counsellor. I can't think why he became the commercial counsellor. He wasn't a commercial man at all, but never mind. We were told that we were needed, or Alan was needed, not me, but Alan, by a man called Murray MacLehose, a very distinguished chap, who was governor of Hong Kong, had just been made governor of Hong Kong, and was not at all happy with his PA, political assistant, political advisor. He was a very nice man who was his political advisor, but he couldn't speak Chinese. Well, in Hong Kong, you needed to get on with China, a very big neighbour. And Murray knew about Alan and knew that he was a Chinese speaker and wanted him. So after 8 months in Greece, we were going to be uprooted and moved. And I was appalled, and so was Alan. And he went to his ambassador in Greece and said, look, if I moved to Hong Kong after only 8 months in Greece, everybody's going to think that I've done something stupid. And admittedly, commercial counsellor is not exactly fitted to my nature of things, but I'm doing a job which I love and we enjoy being in Greece, and we really need to be able to stay so that it looks as if any move is not because I've disgraced myself. And luckily, Robin, what was he called? You don't remember? No, I don't. I'll remember his name sometime. Absolutely understood and said, okay, right, I will tell Murray MacLehose that of course you can go, but you can't go yet. I shall need you for at least another 18 months. How would that do? So Alan agreed gratefully, and I was grateful because I was longing to explore Greece. I mean, to be in Greece was just such a novelty. We should have had 4, 5 or 6 years there, and we were only going to have 2, but it was better than 8 months. So we stayed, and meanwhile we let Applebys, and the whole process of actually making Applebys livable in the whole house, getting things right, getting the family settled in it, was to come later, after we got back.
But you're still here?
Yes.
50 years later? 50
years later. It will be 50 years in 2023. We bought it in 73. So, yes, that's right. So 2023 will be 50 years since we brought this wreck.
So in the end, it wasn't such a bad...
No, it was marvellous. Well, it made it, in the end, into a really very happy family house, didn't it? And it fitted, I mean, everybody could fit in, and it was being the sort of centre for family life for, well, coming up for 50 years. We were very lucky.
That's great, 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 great. Let's just stop that there.